After closing the deal with Turner Construction, I was having coffee with their representative, Sharon. It's not often that I have coffee with a client's representative. However, Sharon and I are the same age, so we naturally hit it off. We were chatting about trivial matters. Suddenly, Sean's boss, Nathan, the manager of Turner Construction, came over and said something shocking.
Your company's president didn't go to college, did he? We don't associate with the likes of you. The contract is off.
Sean turned pale instantly. As I stood there in astonishment at Nathan's rude attitude, the situation took an unexpected turn, and Nathan would come to regret his words. My name is Frank Wiseman, and I am 35 years old. I currently work at a small factory. Even though it's a small factory, I take pride in my work every day. Since graduating from high school, I have been working tirelessly. The reason I ended up working with just a high school diploma is related to my illness. I have suffered from a mysterious illness since birth that severely weakens the muscles in my legs. Because of this, I have been forced to use a wheelchair since I was very young. Before I started elementary school, even though I was in a wheelchair, everyone around me was kind, and my parents showered me with love, so I had no problems. However, when I entered elementary school, the situation changed drastically. My classmates began to mock me for being in a wheelchair.
Hey, you're in the way. Move it.
I'm sorry.
Even when I apologized, my classmates continued to follow me around and make snide remarks. Why do I have to go through this? It's not like I chose to be born with this body. I was so frustrated and sad that I couldn't even put it into words, and I spent my days crying in a corner of the house. Even though I wanted to talk to my parents, I didn't want to make them sad by telling them about my troubles. So, I kept the bullying at school a secret. I had no choice but to endure the pain alone. Over time, I became a child who couldn't express myself because I was so worried about what others thought of me. But then one day, as I was wheeling myself home, I hit a rock on the path and fell over with my wheelchair. I did it again. Back then, children's wheelchairs weren't widely available, so I used a wheelchair meant for adults. Because of this, it was a bit hard to maneuver, and I often tripped over stones. Usually, my parents or some kind person would be nearby to help me, but that day, no one was around. With my weak leg muscles, I couldn't get up by myself. What should I do? As I was feeling hopeless, my classmates happened to pass by and approached me. Even though they always teased me, I had no choice but to ask them for help to get up. I mustered up the courage and asked,
I'm sorry. Could you help me get up?
but the words that came back from my classmates plunged me into despair. They were holding their stomachs, laughing.
Why should we help you? We don't have any obligation to. Handle it on your own.
They just laughed at me without offering any help.
You can't even handle your wheelchair properly.
They said even more hurtful things. I was angry at myself for not being able to talk back. Just then, a man in his 40s and a woman, who seemed to be his wife, came out of a small factory nearby, having heard the commotion, and helped me.
What are you thinking? It's terrible to just laugh and not help someone in need right in front of you.
Hearing the man's voice, my classmates ran away. The man and the woman then helped me up and checked to see if I was injured.
Are you okay? The path here is bad, so it's hard to move around in a wheelchair. Oh, your knee is a bit scraped. Let's go inside and take care of that.
The woman said as she pushed my wheelchair and took me into the factory. Inside the factory, large machines were running non-stop. Having never been inside a factory before, I watched the scene with great interest. The woman then disinfected my knee and put an adhesive bandage on it. Even during this, I was captivated by the busy machines and employees. The man who helped me spoke up.
Are you curious about that machine? It makes car parts.
Car parts.
I asked, puzzled.
Yes, that's right. Without the parts we make, cars wouldn't run. It's a small factory, but isn't it impressive?
The man said with a smile. I was amazed at how a car wouldn't run without just one part, and I continued to look around the factory. The man then made me an offer.
Are you interested in this factory? You can come by any time. My name is Henry Ford, and I'm the president of this factory. You're always welcome here.
Henry's wife nodded enthusiastically beside him.
Really? Thank you so much.
I said in a loud voice. Henry, surprised by my loud voice, still replied, "Of course." At that moment, I was drawn to the unknown world of the factory. I genuinely wanted to see more of the work inside the factory. From that day on, I started visiting Henry's factory almost every day, participating in the work there. Though I was still an elementary school student, Henry never gave me actual work. However, he taught me simple tasks in a playful manner, and I became more and more fascinated by the factory. I used to hate living in a wheelchair, but now I looked forward to stopping by Henry's factory after school, and the wheelchair didn't bother me anymore. Even though some of my classmates still teased me for being in a wheelchair, I didn't care about that anymore. My parents, who had seen me become a brighter person, were also happy. And so, I began to enjoy my daily life. One day, as usual, I was wheeling myself to the factory along the familiar path. I wondered what new things I would learn today. With excitement, I headed to the factory. Just then, my mean classmates showed up in front of me again. I had a bad feeling and tried to avoid them, but they blocked my way like a high wall. They started hurling cruel words at me.
Hey, you're a walking pollution. You shouldn't be on the streets. You're in the way.
A walking pollution. It's true that my wheelchair might take up some space, but saying that is too cruel. As I was looking down, I heard a loud voice from behind.
Enough already. The road doesn't belong to you. Why are you acting so high and mighty?
It was Henry. My classmates had a look of panic on their faces when they heard Henry's voice.
Do you even know what pollution means? Pollution refers to people like you. What's so fun about mocking someone who hasn't done anything wrong?
Henry's face turned red with anger. Once again, my classmates ran away. At that moment, Henry looked like a hero to me. As I stood there in shock, Henry said,
Don't let people like that say whatever they want. If something bothers you, say it. Be stronger.
But I'm in a wheelchair, so it's just the way it is.
The moment I said that, Henry's expression twisted a bit.
So what? Whether you're in a wheelchair or not doesn't matter. Have more confidence in yourself. Besides, you're going to be an amazing engineer someday, right?
An amazing engineer. Hearing Henry's words made me happy.
Yes, I want to become a top-notch engineer like you, Henry.
Hearing this, Henry smiled warmly. From that day on, I wanted to work at Henry's factory in the future. Time flew by, and I became a senior in high school. Compared to my elementary school days, I had grown bigger and became better at maneuvering my wheelchair. I still visited Henry's factory almost every day. Now, I enjoyed doing hobby projects with Henry. One day, a piece of paper fell out of my bag onto the floor. Henry picked it up and handed it to me.
A career plan. You're already at that age, huh?
Yeah, since there are limited colleges that can accommodate wheelchair users, my choices are restricted. I really wanted to study engineering, but it can't be helped. When I said this sadly, Henry revealed an amazing fact.
Is that so? I only graduated from high school and took over this factory from my father, so I never went to college. But I have no regrets. Starting work here earlier than anyone else allowed me to learn so much.
His words were an eye-opener for me. I see. College isn't compulsory, so if I don't want to go, I can work just like Henry did. With that in mind, I made a decision. I went home and told my parents about my feelings. I'm not going to college. I want to learn engineering at Henry's factory and become a skilled engineer. My parents were surprised, but agreed with my decision.
I'm moved that you're being so positive. You used to struggle to express your feelings.
It's all thanks to Henry. Of course, it's your life, so do what you want.
So, I decided to work at Henry's factory after graduating from high school. I graduated from high school without any issues and immediately started working at Henry's factory. Henry taught me the factory work thoroughly from scratch. 20 years have passed since then. I am now a skilled engineer, working energetically at a factory. One day, I was making my sales rounds to secure a contract. This was a sales trip to let people know about the products from our factory. As usual, I was wheeling myself along when a man in a suit walking toward me suddenly spoke to me.
You're Frank, right? You haven't changed a bit.
I recognized that voice. My heartbeat skyrocketed. As I stayed silent, Nathan started laughing.
Remember what I said back then. You're a walking pollution, so stay off the road. You're a nuisance and an eyesore.
Yes, the person talking to me was my old classmate, Nathan, who used to mock me relentlessly. I struggled to maintain my composure and spoke to Nathan. Sorry, but I'm working, so I have to use this path. When I said that, Nathan laughed.
Work? There's no way someone in a wheelchair can work.
What is he talking about? There are plenty of people who work in wheelchairs. As I stood there in shock, Nathan continued rapidly.
If people in wheelchairs work, they'd just be a nuisance. At least in my company, there are no people in wheelchairs. I'm a manager at a famous company now, and I'd never hire someone in a wheelchair.
Hearing Nathan's words made me sad. There are many people in this world who have mobility issues and use wheelchairs. It's awful to have such a biased view. Talking to Nathan any further would be pointless and only make me more frustrated. With that thought, I tried to leave quickly. But Nathan wouldn't let me go.
Anyway, you should make sure not to bother others. Just being in a wheelchair is a real nuisance. And remember, I'm in a higher position now. So even though we're classmates, you should speak to me with respect.
Hearing those words made me truly angry. Why should I speak to my classmate Nathan with respect? I wanted to say something back, but I decided it was a waste of time to talk to Nathan. I quickly left the scene. Nathan's laughter echoed behind me for a long time. Running into Nathan before my sales calls, what a day. I was exasperated by my bad luck. However, the sales calls went well, and I headed home exhausted. A few days later, I received a call from Turner Construction, a major construction company, wanting to discuss a business deal. Finally, the time had come, and I excitedly headed to the meeting place. But once again, I would face a nightmare. I arrived at Turner Construction's entrance. There was a step at the entrance, making it difficult to get in. But this was nothing new. Wherever I go, if the place isn't wheelchair accessible, I have to think about how to get around. As I was considering my options, a kind voice came from behind.
Are you okay? Let me give you a little push from behind.
It was Sean, the representative. With Sean pushing my wheelchair from behind, I somehow managed to get inside the building. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. When I said that, Sean apologized with a regretful look.
I'm sorry our company isn't wheelchair accessible. It would be better if it were.
Just then, a loud voice came from in front of me. At that moment, I felt a chill run down my spine.
We don't need wheelchair access. People in wheelchairs have no business coming to this company.
To my surprise, it was Nathan standing right in front of me. Nathan started staring at me in shock.
Why are you here? This isn't a place for you.
Sean watched in astonishment.
Oh, you two know each other.
As soon as Sean said that, Nathan started laughing.
We were classmates in elementary school. It's really annoying to know someone like him, a burden on society. So, why are you here?
Nathan glared at me arrogantly. I had nothing to fear. I honestly explained that I was here for a business meeting with the company. But Nathan, with a nasty smile, said,
A business meeting? You having a business meeting with this company? What could you possibly have to discuss? Well, good luck. I don't think this company will ever sign a contract with you.
Nathan said whatever he wanted and walked away. I couldn't understand why I had to endure Nathan's insults, but I didn't have time to bother with him. Sean looked at me apologetically and said,
Nathan is always like that. I'm really sorry.
What a terrible boss, making even his subordinates feel this way. I couldn't believe it, but I pulled myself together and proceeded with the business meeting. In the conference room I was shown to, I explained our products. Sean nodded as he listened, and the meeting went smoothly.
Would you like to grab a coffee afterward? There's a nice wheelchair-accessible cafe nearby.
It's rare to find a wheelchair-accessible cafe. Sean must have found it for my sake. Grateful for his thoughtfulness, I agreed to go to the cafe. We arrived at the cafe and enjoyed delicious coffee at a table. Sean and I, being the same age, naturally hit it off. Just then, the cafe door opened, and Nathan walked in, approaching us.
Is the meeting over? I heard at the office that your company's president didn't go to college. It's unheard of for a president to be a high school grad these days.
Nathan said this and started laughing.
There are plenty of capable people out there, even without a college degree.
Sean said, visibly shaken, but Nathan's laughter didn't stop.
What are you talking about? High school grads are just useless. And hiring someone in a wheelchair like this must be because they're incompetent.
Incompetent. Time seemed to stop for a moment. I had endured everything Nathan said until now, but this was the limit. Why do I have to put up with this? I started shaking with anger. Then Nathan repeated the same words and said something unbelievable.
Your company's president didn't go to college, did he? We don't associate with the likes of you. The contract is off.
I was stunned. I couldn't believe how ridiculous Nathan was. Meanwhile, Sharon turned pale.
Nathan, do you realize what could happen if you make such decisions on your own?
Nathan laughed, clutching his stomach.
It's obvious we shouldn't be making any deals with someone like him.
Sean was so shocked he couldn't respond. At that moment, I made a big decision. Talking here won't solve anything. Let's go back to Turner Construction and discuss this further. When I said this, Sharon replied with a trembling voice, and Nathan started to get angry.
There's nothing to discuss. We should just cancel the contract right here and now.
No, the deal was already finalized, so we need to discuss it again. When I said that, Nathan looked annoyed.
I don't care what happens anymore.
Sean muttered in a small voice. Then Sean started contacting someone on the phone. We returned to Turner Construction and entered the conference room again. As soon as we entered, Nathan started yelling at me.
Hurry up and cancel the contract. I'm not like you. I'm busy.
Sean and I stayed silent. I had already made up my mind. After a moment of silence, I began to speak decisively. It's unfortunate, as I thought we could have a good partnership with Turner Construction. But since Nathan wants to cancel the contract, we will void this $500 million deal.
What?
As I said, we'll void the $500 million contract as you wishes. Nathan looked at me in disbelief.
$500 million. I wasn't informed of such a large transaction.
Just then, a loud voice came from the entrance of the conference room.
Of course not. This project was kept confidential.
Douglas.
The voice came from Douglas, the president of Turner Construction. Douglas glared at Nathan with a furious expression.
When Sean contacted me, I thought it was a joke, but I was shocked when I came. Were you really about to cancel an important contract on your own?
Nathan froze at Douglas's words. Realizing he couldn't handle it alone, Sharon had contacted Douglas from the cafe.
That is...
What is it? Explain it so I can understand.
Nathan began to say something outrageous in a trembling voice.
Frank has always been a nuisance because of that wheelchair. And on top of that, he didn't go to college. You, being highly educated, must understand that compared to us college graduates, high school grads have neither the education nor the class. There's no benefit to our company in dealing with someone like him. And his company's president is also a high school grad.
Douglas burst into laughter. Nathan, who had been watching intently, looked shocked.
You're wrong. Frank being in a wheelchair is not his fault. How can you think that people are a nuisance just because they're in wheelchairs? And for you to say that high school grads have no education or class, it's your head that's messed up for saying something so outrageous with a straight face.
Nathan couldn't respond to the truth and looked down. Douglas then began to reveal an astonishing fact.
And Frank is not someone you can speak lightly of. He is the CEO of Ford Industries.
Ford Industries.
Nathan fell silent, seemingly deep in thought. Then Sean spoke up.
Ford Industries is one of the top 3 companies in the U.S.
Hearing this, Nathan's eyes widened in surprise.
There's no way he's the president of such a big company. This must be some mistake.
Even at this point, Nathan refused to acknowledge that I was the president. Douglas let out a big sigh.
This $500 million contract was crucial for our company's future, and you were about to ruin it.
Nathan timidly asked Douglas,
What exactly is this contract about?
Hearing this, Douglas exploded with anger.
You were about to cancel the contract without even knowing what it was about. How irresponsible can you be?
I'm sorry.
Douglas was right. It's shallow to cancel a deal just because I'm in a wheelchair and didn't go to college. Then Douglas revealed even more.
Nathan, do you know about the big event happening in the U.S. next year?
The Olympics?
That's right. Our country will finally host the Olympics next year, and after that, the Paralympics will be held. Ford Industries is a sponsor for the Paralympics and is currently rushing preparations for the venue.
Nathan looked shocked.
A sponsor? Why would his company sponsor the Paralympics? I can't believe they have that kind of money.
Douglas let out another big sigh. Sean showed some documents to Nathan. Nathan looked at the documents and fell silent.
The top seller of wheelchairs in the U.S.
Yes, Frank's company is the #1 wheelchair manufacturer in the U.S.
Douglas also raised his voice in surprise at Sean's words.
Ford Industries manufactures and sells wheelchairs, and their technology is highly praised internationally. Frank kindly decided to sponsor the Paralympics to showcase this technology. For the Paralympics, a barrier-free venue is essential. Frank came to my company to propose building those barrier-free facilities.
I didn't know any of this.
Nathan said, his body trembling with shock. Seeing Nathan so flustered for the first time, I found it somewhat amusing. You used to call me a pollution, didn't you? Now that you know I'm involved in such a big project, do you still think the same? When I said this, Nathan's face turned pale. Yes, I had taken over Henry's factory and now worked as the president. The turning point was 8 years ago. Henry had called me with a serious look on his face.
My wife and I are getting old. I want to entrust this factory to you. Can you take on this responsibility?
I was so surprised by the sudden proposal that I almost fell over. Seeing my reaction, Henry said,
I have nothing more to teach you. I've taught you everything without holding back. I can trust you with this factory.
Those words made me decide to become the president. As a president, and sometimes as an employee, I worked hard. Ford Industries had mainly been manufacturing car parts, but one day I decided to pursue a long-held dream. That dream was to be involved in wheelchair manufacturing. As a child, I struggled to handle a wheelchair. There were also places where I needed help, which always frustrated me. I thought if I could be involved in designing and manufacturing wheelchairs, I could create the ideal wheelchair. I thought that way. After a year of working on wheelchair manufacturing, I succeeded in creating my ideal wheelchair. When it was released, it sold like hotcakes. It became popular for being easy for children to handle and hard to tip over, and now it's even sold overseas. Currently, it's known as one of the most sought-after wheelchairs. Even with my busy schedule, I had another dream. That was to be involved in the Paralympics. As a child, I loved watching the Paralympic broadcasts on TV, seeing people with similar disabilities excel. Watching them made me dream that I could do anything. Fortunately, the Paralympics will be held in the US next year. I realized this was my chance and decided to sponsor the Paralympics. By sponsoring the Paralympics, I could show the world how important wheelchairs are, and people would understand the importance of barrier-free environments. With this in mind, I negotiated with a famous construction company, Turner Construction, for their cooperation. Given the large amount of money involved, I asked Douglas to keep this deal confidential. Therefore, Nathan hadn't heard about it. In the silence of the conference room, Douglas shouted at Nathan,
Nathan, have you always looked down on people in wheelchairs like that? That means you've been looking at my daughter the same way, haven't you?
Your daughter?
Nathan asked in a trembling voice, and Douglas began to speak heavily.
My daughter has the same condition as Frank and has had bad legs since she was a child, using a wheelchair. She was mocked a lot growing up and had a really tough time, but thanks to Frank's wheelchair, she changed. She became more cheerful and started going out more. I can only thank Frank for developing that wheelchair.
Douglas said with a distant look in his eyes. I also used to hate going out in a wheelchair like your daughter, but I'm glad the wheelchair I developed has been useful. When I said that, Nathan fell silent. Seeing this, Douglas began to get angry.
By the way, Nathan, from what I've been hearing, you've been calling Frank this jerk. Speak to him respectfully. You have no right to call him this jerk.
Nathan looked at me with a face that was hard to read, whether he was reflecting or not.
Frank, I'm sorry for the trouble caused by our former employee. We would like to continue with the contract as planned. Is that okay with you?
The moment Douglas said that, Nathan turned pale and started trembling.
Former employee.
I nodded firmly next to the shaken Nathan. I want people with physical disabilities like mine to be encouraged by the Paralympics. It's clear that the Paralympics can be a beacon of hope for people with disabilities. Let's work together to make it a great event. When I said that, Douglas shook my hand firmly. At that moment, Nathan started yelling,
Douglas, why are you calling me a former employee?
Douglas looked at Nathan seriously.
Turner Construction wants to promote more barrier-free initiatives in the future. This is to make life easier for people in wheelchairs. But you haven't been kind to people with disabilities like those in wheelchairs. Someone like you has no place here. It's better for you to resign from this company.
Douglas deliberately didn't use the word fired, but it was effectively a dismissal.
No way. This can't be.
Realize that your past actions have led to this outcome.
Nathan collapsed on the spot and didn't move. The arrogant Nathan was gone. After that, Nathan resigned from a company, as Douglas had said. He then started his own company. However, it didn't take off and went bankrupt in 6 months. He is now struggling to repay the debt he incurred. The consequences of his actions have caught up with him. Remembering that our current actions shape our future, I hope he becomes a bit kinder to people. The Paralympics were held grandly. The hundreds of wheelchairs I provided were used by spectators with disabilities. The barrier-free buildings constructed by Turner Construction were praised by many people with disabilities. If my younger self could see me now, I'm sure he would be proud. I will continue to actively work towards creating a city that is kind to people with disabilities.